Hey folks, in this video we're going to answer some Google autocomplete questions about the violin. So let's start here with what violin? And first question we have here is, what is rosin for violin? Rosin is this stuff made from tree sap basically, and it allows the hair from your bow to grip on the strings and cause them to vibrate efficiently. So that's rosin. You need it. What are the strings on the violin? The strings on a violin, we have G, we have D, we have A, and we have E. Modern strings, they are made of usually metal and synthetic materials. Ancient strings, they were made of gut. And they were not made of cat gut, contrary to the myth, they are sheep gut. What is the sound of violin? Now, if you've never heard it before, I recommend you search for Hilary Hahn, or Ray Chan, or Joshua Bell, and they will give you a much better sample, but here's the very basics. It'll be something like... Well, this is the basic sound of a violin. What is a violin plot? I have no idea. Is it a math thing? I think it's a math thing. What are the parts of a violin? Well, starting at the top, we have the scroll. This is purely decorative. Then we have the peg box, where the pegs go. We have the nut. And then this is the neck of the instrument. The fingerboard is the black part. Then we have the body of the instrument. The top is called the top or the belly. The sides is called the ribs. And the back is called the back. And this is the bridge. We have a tailpiece. This is a chin rest. The tailpiece connects to the end pin by the tail gut. This at the bottom here is the saddle. And strings. And inside there is a sound post. Those are the basic parts of the violin. What are the notes on a violin? They go from G3 to, I think, A7. This is a G3. And then A7 is way here in Paganini territory. I think. Yeah, something like that. If you're creative, you can actually go a little high. But that's basically the range of the violin. What violin should I buy? You should buy the best violin you can afford. Don't get caught in the hype of a Stradivarius or something like that. You don't need an instrument like that to sound great. A lot of great sounding comes from the player, not the instrument necessarily. So get the best violin you can afford, don't break the bank. What is a Stradivarius violin? A Stradivarius is a violin made by Antonio Stradivari. He was an Italian Cremonese violin maker from the 17th century. An instrument from the 1644 to 1737 with his name would be one of his instruments, unless it's a fake or a copy. And they are regarded as some of the best instruments. They are very rare, they're antiques, and they're worth millions. What violin did Heifetz play? Jascha Heifetz, one of the greatest violinists of all time. He played a 1742 Guarneri del Gesù that I believe was donated to the San Francisco Fine Arts Museum. What violin did Paganini play? Paganini also played on a Guarneri del Gesù violin. It's called Il Canone. Where violin? Where to buy a violin? At the violin shop. That's the best place. People there will be able to help you choose an instrument that is best suited for you. Where was the violin invented? It was invented in Italy. Where are twoset violin from? They are from Australia. Where are the notes on a violin? The notes on a violin, they live here in the fingerboard all over the place. You have to pick them up. Where is twoset violin from? They are Australia. I think they're from Brisbane. Where to learn violin? Whatever is most convenient for you, ideally with a teacher. Where is Paganini's violin? Paganini's violin, the Il Canone, is in the city of Genoa. He bequeathed it to the city of Genoa, and that's where it is. I think you can go see it on display on a museum. Where is the violin from the Titanic? That one is in a Titanic museum in a place called Pigeon Forge in Tennessee in the United States. Where to learn violin online? YouTube. YouTube is a great place to learn the violin, but I still recommend you get a teacher, at least for some basics that they will indicate with positioning, because some things videos cannot demonstrate very well, that a person can go there and adjust your hand if you're doing it wrong, so a teacher would be the best, but online is an excellent source of information too. Where is Black Violin from? I think they're from Miami, Florida? Nope, my bad, they're from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. When was violin invented? The early 16th century in Italy, most credited to a guy called Andrea Amati. When to change violin strings? Well, when your strings start to sound false, they don't have that shimmer about them anymore, or if they start to actually fray or unravel, or if they're looking cruddy, that's a good time to change the strings. There is no set rule, but depends on how much you practice and how much you play. Every 6 months is a good ballpark, give or take. When to rosin violin bow? When you feel like you're not getting enough grip, but don't over rosin, because then you're actually gonna muddle your sound. When to learn violin? Anytime, or the sooner the better even. When is a violin a fiddle? Violin is the formal name for this instrument, fiddle is a more casual term used. Also, if you're playing music by Beethoven, by Mozart, by Bach, by Mendelssohn, you'd be playing on a violin. But if you're playing The Devil Went Down to Georgia, or Swallowtail Jig, or Indian Ate the Woodchuck, then you're fiddling. When was the first violin? Early 16th century. I believe the earliest we have confirmed on record is from the year 1566 by Andrea Amati, and it was part of a set that was for Charles IX of France. When to restring a violin? Well, when your strings aren't sounding very good anymore, or if they're actually starting to unravel, that's a good time to restring it. Always do, if you change strings, if you can at all, one at a time. If you're gonna change them all, start with the G, then D, A, and E. If not, just replace the one that is missing or that you need replacing. When I play violin? Whenever it's convenient. When was violin make? Well, definitely at a time where there was better grammar, but early 16th century by Andrea Amati. When was the violin first used? Again, early 16th century. Why is violin the best instrument? I need Ling Ling insurance for this one, but the violin is the best instrument because you can play pretty much anything on it, you can transpose pretty much anything for it. It has a marvelous range, and it allows you to be incredibly virtuoso with it. And it's portable. You can put it in a case and carry it with you. And if you're good, people are not gonna want you to leave. So that's why the violin is the best instrument. Why is violin the hardest instrument? Now that, I believe it's because nothing about this instrument or playing it is intuitive. You shove it against your neck, you hold it down with your jaw, you contort your hand in an unnatural position, you have to hit very specific locations on this fingerboard that might change depending on the weather. And at the same time you have to coordinate this other hand that is holding this stick in a very weird position, and it has to be everything with absolute precision, because this has no forgiveness, otherwise it's just going to screech at you. So that's why I think it's the hardest instrument. Everything has to be perfect. Why is violin better than viola? Oh god. Ling Ling insurance again. I'm gonna answer this from the luthier point of view. And my point of view on this is that the violin has more consistent measurements. There is variations between makers and models and such, but they're basically, we know what to expect on a violin. Violas have a much greater variation amongst them. So yeah, that's why the violin is better than the viola, because it's more consistent. Why violins have no frets? I heard a joke about this one once, and it was that Andrea Amati, the guy we credit with inventing the violin as we know it, he was working on his great invention, and he was having trouble with it. It wasn't coming out the way he wanted it. And his wife came to comfort him, and she told him, "Don't fret it, it's gonna be okay." Why violins don't have frets? Now the real answer for that, you search the internet, you're gonna get a dozen different answers, and half of them are true, the other half are not. and there is speculation between those, but the one that I subscribe to is that this is an instrument that is very sensitive to changes in the weather, the humidity, the temperature. The time at the gut strings, it was even more so. The modern strings are more stable, but gut strings would go out of tune very easily. A good violinist is able to account for those changes and compensate. So your notes might not be exactly where they were supposed to be depending on the weather or depending on the strings you're using. So if you had frets, you would be stuck to those positions. Also, without frets, you are free to play any note anywhere you want on this thing. I know you can do glissandos and slides and everything on fretted instruments, but it's not the same. So that's why violins have no frets. Why violin is so expensive? Not taking into consideration the crazy stuff like Stradivarius and Amatis and Delgesos and Guadagninis, the normal violins that are expensive, a lot of work goes into making these things. And it takes me about 3 months to make one if I'm in a hurry. Also, it takes a lot of specialized knowledge, specialized work that takes years for you to learn to do. You can't just learn it in a week course or something like that. It takes time and effort and dedication. And in the end it might not come out as good as you wanted it to, so I have to start over. So it's a very involved, very laborious process that requires a lot of specialization, and that's why it's expensive. Why violin is better than piano? Oh, here we go again. The violin is better than the piano because you can put this in a case and carry it around with you with no problem. A piano, I've seen videos of people who haul pianos around town, but that is not practical. This you can put in a case and carry it with you. So that's why the violin is better than the piano. Why violin doesn't have fret? We already answered that one. Why violin doesn't make sound? I don't know, do you have rosin on your bow? Because if you don't, this is what you get. Why violin sounds scratchy? That would be because you haven't been practicing. So let's go practice. If you have any more questions, please leave them below. I'll do my best to answer them. And for now, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.